Hey guys, tonight we drift into the sun-drenched, myth-soaked world of ancient Greece, a civilization wrapped in marble dreams, philosophical whispers, and gods who couldn't keep their togas on. But beneath the shimmering legends of Socrates, the warrior cries of Sparta, and those gleaming temples perched on hills lies a reality far darker, far stranger, and far more brutal than any textbook dared to tell you. Because while ancient Greece painted the foundation of Western thought in gold and ivory, it also crushed its people under the weight of survival, a weight you, with your soft hands and climate-controlled comfort, would crumble beneath before the sun reached its zenith. So before we slip deeper into this dream, into this nightmare dressed as civilization, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly want to walk these ancient roads with me. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from and what hour has brought you here. There's something hauntingly beautiful about knowing we're all scattered across time zones, yet gathering here in the dark to remember what was. Now, let the room grow dim around you. Let the world outside fade. Maybe light a candle, or let the gentle hum of night sounds pull you under. We're about to step through the veil of centuries, and I promise you, ancient Greece is waiting, and it's far stranger than you imagined. Chapter 1. Awakening in Stone and Shadow. Picture this. You open your eyes not to the soft glow of a phone screen or the distant hum of traffic, but to absolute, crushing heat. The sun has already clawed its way over the horizon, and your home, if you can call it that, has transformed into a clay kiln, baking you alive. Your dwelling is humble, almost primitive. Walls of sun-bleached mud brick or rough-hewn stone rise around you, cracked and weathered by decades of Mediterranean fury. Small openings serve as windows, but there's no glass to shield you, no screens to keep out the world. Just wooden shutters that rattle in the wind, and even those are luxuries some can't afford. The air inside is thick, heavy, tasting of dust and yesterday's cooking smoke. There's no insulation between you and the elements, no barrier between comfort and suffering. In summer, these walls drink in the heat like thirsty men at a well, then breathe it back into your space all night long, turning sleep into a restless battle against your own sweat. In winter, gods help you in winter, those same walls become ice. The cold seeps through stone and into bone, and you huddle beneath whatever threadbare cloth you own, wondering if morning will ever come, or if you'll simply freeze into another statue in this land of statues. Your bed is barely worthy of the name. A thin reed mat, perhaps stuffed with straw, if fortune smiled on your family. No pillows cradle your head, just a rolled cloak, maybe an arm gone numb from supporting your skull through the night. And the visitors. Oh, the visitors. Lice dance through your hair like tiny priests performing dark rituals. Fleas leap from the rushes on the floor. Bedbugs toast to another successful evening of feasting on your blood. Privacy is a concept that hasn't been invented yet, or perhaps it's been reserved for the gods alone. Your family shares this single room. Parents, children, grandparents, if they've survived this long, all breathing the same stale air, all listening to each other's dreams and nightmares. The goat sleeps in the corner, because of course it does. Where else would it go? Rising isn't a choice. The heat makes it impossible to remain horizontal. Your body screams for water, but there's none here. No faucet to turn, no reservoir waiting. Water is a journey, an expedition. You must walk, still groggy, still aching from yesterday's labor, to the public fountain in the agora. Or if you live beyond the city walls, to the well that serves your village. You hoist a ceramic amphora onto your shoulder, feeling its weight settle into the groove that's formed there over years. The path is rocky, uneven, designed by goats and donkeys rather than city planners. One wrong step and the jar shatters, and with it goes not just water, but dignity, because everyone will hear the crash. Everyone will know. The morning cleansing is a ritual of pragmatism, not purity. You don't bathe, not really. That's an evening activity, if you have the energy and the water. Instead, you might splash your face from yesterday's leftover water, tepid and slightly cloudy. Then comes the oil. Olive oil, that liquid gold of the Mediterranean, becomes your soap, your moisturizer, your everything. You massage it into your skin, working it across your arms, your legs, your torso. It collects the grime, the salt of dried sweat, the dust that coats everything in this climate. Then you take your strigil, a curved blade of bronze or iron, shaped like a question mark, and you scrape. Long strokes, pressing just hard enough to remove the oil and everything it's captured, but not so hard you draw blood. It's effective in its way, but clean? Not by any modern standard. You still smell of yesterday, still carry the perfume of survival, sweat and smoke, oil and earth, human and animal mingling in ways that would horrify your modern sensibilities. And through it all, through every uncomfortable moment, you haven't even eaten yet. Your stomach growls, hollow and angry. Your muscles ache from yesterday's work, and tomorrow's hasn't even begun. The sun climbs higher, hotter, more merciless with every passing moment. This is your morning in ancient Greece, and it's only just started. Chapter 2. Breaking fast on dust and dreams. Hunger gnaws at you like a living thing, so you turn to the day's first meal with hope that fades the moment you see what's waiting. Breakfast in ancient Greece isn't a meal. It's an apology. An acknowledgement that yes, the body needs fuel, but no, we're not going to make it pleasant. Center stage, barley bread, or maza as they call it. But calling it bread feels generous, like calling a prison cell a bedroom. This is grain ground to powder, mixed with water to form a paste, then shaped into flat, dense cakes and cooked on heated stones or buried in ash. The result is something that tastes like you're chewing the very earth itself, dry, gritty, occasionally crunchy, with bits of stone that slipped into the grain during grinding. It's stale by default, because who has time to bake fresh bread every morning? This was made yesterday, maybe the day before. It's hard enough to use as a weapon. In fact, there are probably military applications no one's explored yet. You dunk it in wine. Not the good wine. The kind that flows at symposiums where men recline on couches and debate the nature of reality. No, this is the everyday stuff, sour, sharp, and always mixed with water. Because the water itself? Questionable. The wells sometimes run foul. The fountains sometimes taste of the bronze pipes that carry the water. Disease lurks in still pools and slow streams. So wine becomes medicine, becomes safety. Even children drink it, watered down until it's barely more than colored water. But it's colored water that won't kill you with dysentery. The alcohol is weak, but it's enough to kill whatever invisible demons swim in the liquid. If your family has means, and let's be honest, they probably don't, there might be figs, black or green, dried or fresh, depending on the season. Sweet explosions of flavor that feel like luxury against the monotony of barley. Or olives, wrinkled and salt-cured, bursting with brine and oil. Maybe, if the gods have blessed you beyond measure, a smear of soft goat cheese, tangy and sharp. But for most, it's bread and watered wine. That's it. That's the meal. No eggs sunny side up. No coffee steaming in a ceramic mug. No toast with butter melting into golden pools. No honey, unless you know someone who keeps bees and you have something to trade. And the ritual itself is rushed, pragmatic, almost shameful in its efficiency. You eat standing or squatting. There are no dining tables for the morning meal. No chairs pulled up for family conversation. You grab your portion. You chew quickly, trying not to think about the grit between your teeth or the way the bread seems to expand in your mouth, absorbing every drop of moisture. And you swallow. Then you move on. Work awaits. The day devours time like a beast. The real cruelty. If you're a woman, you don't even eat with the men. The males of the household eat first. Father, sons, brothers, even male slaves sometimes get priority. Women and young children wait in the gynoecium, the women's quarters, for their turn at the leftover bread. Not because there isn't enough, necessarily, but because that's the order of things. That's how the cosmos arranges itself, from Zeus on Olympus down to the lowliest household in Athens. So you wait, stomach cramping, watching through doorways as the men eat their fill. And when your turn finally comes, the bread is even staler, the wine even more watered down, and somehow you're expected to be grateful. This is the civilization that gave the world dramatic theater, that birthed philosophy, that argued the nature of justice and beauty and truth. But breakfast is punishment. Breakfast is a necessary evil. Breakfast is what you endure so you can live to see the evening meal, which might might include an actual cooked dish. Lentils, perhaps, vegetables in oil, fish if someone in the family knows how to use a net. But that's hours away, lifetimes away. Right now, it's just you, your chunk of stone bread, and the dawning realization that you're going to do this again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Bon appetit. Try not to chip a tooth on the grit. Chapter 3. The Ritual of False Cleanliness. With breakfast disappointment settling like lead in your stomach, you turn your attention to the charade the Greeks call hygiene, a word that promises much and delivers little. Let's be clear from the start. You are not getting clean. Not by any standard that would satisfy your modern soul. What you're about to do is perform an elaborate ritual that makes you feel cleaner while leaving you objectively still quite filthy. The bathhouse, if your city has one and you can afford the entrance fee, is a social space first and a washing space second. But most mornings you don't go there. You can't spare the time or the coins. Instead, you make do with what's at hand. A basin of water, probably left over from yesterday, and the ever-present olive oil. The process goes like this, and I want you to really picture it. You strip down, because there's no point in trying to stay modest while you're essentially giving yourself a full-body oil massage. The other people in your household barely notice. Nudity isn't shameful here, not the way it will become in later centuries. The Greeks see the human form as natural, beautiful even, worthy of sculpture and celebration. You pour oil into your palm, thick, golden green, smelling of olives and earth. Then you begin to work it into your skin. Shoulders first, then chest and stomach, down your legs, across your arms. You're not moisturizing. You're creating a sticky trap for all the filth coating your body. The dead skin cells, the dried sweat, the dust that seems to accumulate the moment you step outside, the smoke from cooking fires, the grime from work, all of it clings to the oil. Now comes the stregil. This elegant little torture device is shaped like a question mark for a reason, because you should question why anyone thought this was a good idea. It's usually bronze, sometimes iron, with a curved blade that you drag across your oiled skin in long, firm strokes. The scraping makes a sound, a wet, slightly disturbing sound, and what comes off is unsettling. A grey-brown mixture of oil and everything in your body has collected, rolled up into little worms of gunk that fall to the floor or into a waiting basin. It's efficient, in a Roman engineering sort of way. But clean? That's a strong word. You're still sticky. The oil never comes completely off. You're still sweating because it's already blazing hot, and you've just spent 10 minutes vigorously rubbing yourself down. And you still smell like yesterday, just with a fresh top note of olive oil. Your teeth. Oh, your poor teeth. There are no bristled brushes waiting by a porcelain sink. No minty paste in convenient tubes. If you're particularly concerned about oral hygiene, you might chew on a frayed twig, using the fibers to scrub at your teeth and gums. Or you might rub your teeth with crushed charcoal, or rinse your mouth with vinegar or wine, hoping the acid burns away whatever rot is building up in there. But most people, they just don't. Dental care is for the wealthy and the paranoid. Everyone else just accepts that teeth are meant to decay, to ache, to eventually fall out. The pain is normal. The gods made humans to suffer, didn't they? Your hair, if you're a woman, is another battleground. You try to comb through it with a coarse comb, maybe made of bone or wood, working through tangles that have accumulated overnight. If you have the means, you might rub in more oil to tame it, to make it shine. But there's no shampoo to strip away the oils your scalp naturally produces. Those oils just build up, day after day, trapping more dust, more grime, until your next full bath, which might not be for days. Deodorant is a concept that won't exist for millennia. Body odor is simply the smell of people. Everyone has it, some worse than others, depending on diet and labor and personal luck. The wealthy might dab on perfumes, myrrh from Arabia, rose oil from Persia, exotic scents that mask but never eliminate the fundamental musk of humanity. You might splash your face with water from the basin. Cold water, probably a bit stale, maybe with a dead fly floating in it that you flick away without much thought. The water runs down your neck, drips onto the floor, evaporates almost immediately in the dry heat. And then you're done. Clean. Ready to face the day. Ready to put on your clothes and step out into the world, where within an hour you'll be sweating again, collecting new layers of dust, building toward tomorrow's oil-scraping ritual. This is hygiene in ancient Greece. Not cleanliness, but maintenance. Not purity, but survival. You're not trying to eliminate the signs of being human. You're just trying to keep them from becoming overwhelming. The bathhouse, when you finally make it there, offers a bit more. Hot water, if you're lucky. Cold plunges to shock your system awake. Social interaction, because bathing is communal. But even there, even in those more elaborate settings, you're not truly clean by modern standards. You're just less dirty. And somehow, impossibly, this is acceptable. This is normal. This is what it means to live in the cradle of Western civilization, smelling of yesterday's work and tomorrow's sweat, with olive oil in your hair and grit under your nails and teeth that ache with every bite of that cursed barley bread. Welcome to paradise. Try not to think about the last time you actually felt clean. Chapter 4. Dressing for discomfort. Now comes the daily challenge of making yourself presentable, which in ancient Greece means wrapping yourself in glorified bedsheets and hoping they stay put. Your wardrobe consists of exactly 2 items, maybe 3 if you're fortunate: a chiton and a hymation. The chiton is essentially a large rectangle of linen or wool, folded and pinned at the shoulders, sometimes belted at the waist. The hymation is a cloak, another rectangle of fabric that you drape over one shoulder and under the other arm, hoping it doesn't slide off when you move. There are no closets full of options, no drawers overflowing with different outfits for different occasions. You own what you're wearing, maybe one spare if you're middle class, and that's it. When it wears out, and it will from constant use and harsh washing, you'll have to weave or buy another, a process that might take months of saving. The fabric itself is coarse, especially if you're not wealthy. Linen is better than wool in the summer heat, but wool is warmer in winter, so you suffer either way, either too hot or too scratchy. The wealthy have softer weaves, finer threads, even fabric imported from Egypt or the East. But your chiton is rough against your skin, rubbing at your shoulders, chafing under your arms with every movement. And then there's the eternal struggle, keeping it on. These aren't tailored garments with buttons and zippers and elastic waistbands. They're pinned at the shoulders with bronze or iron brooches called fibulae. One poorly placed pin and the whole thing can come undone. Walk too fast, gesture too enthusiastically during an argument, bend over to pick something up, and suddenly you're exposed to the world. Underwear, as we understand it, doesn't exist. There's nothing beneath your chiton except you, which means modesty is a constant negotiation between fabric and movement. Sit down wrong and you're showing things to strangers. Climb a hill with any speed and your whole situation is on display. For women, this is particularly problematic. The chiton might be pinned all the way down both arms, creating sleeves of sorts, but there's no support beneath. No bras, no breastbands for most women. Just gravity doing its work. Athletic Spartan women sometimes wrap cloth around their chests for support during exercise. But Athenian women, they're expected to move gracefully, to float through their domestic duties without complaint, all while effectively wearing a sack that shifts and slides with every step. Footwear is its own adventure in suffering. If you own sandals, leather straps bound to wooden or leather soles, you're among the fortunate. The soles offer some protection from the scorching streets, from the sharp stones, from the things you'd rather not step in. But they don't protect your feet from the sun, which beats down mercilessly, or from the dust that coats everything and works its way between your toes, creating a gritty paste mixed with sweat. If you don't own sandals, you're barefoot, and these streets aren't paved with your comfort in mind. They're rough stone, baked by the sun into a natural griddle. In summer, walking barefoot is like crossing hot coals. In winter, it's like walking on ice. And year-round, there are hazards, broken pottery shards, animal droppings, horses, donkeys, goats, dogs, take your pick, discarded food scraps, puddles of questionable liquids, and the occasional snake seeking warmth in stone crevices. Your feet become tough, calloused, practically leather themselves, but they also become scarred, infected, constantly painful. Every step is a negotiation with discomfort. Now let's talk sun protection, or rather, the complete lack thereof. Hats exist, but they're mainly for farmers and laborers, broad-brimmed affairs made of straw or felt. Wearing one in the city marks you as rural, as someone who works with their hands. The aristocratic men and women of Athens wouldn't be caught dead in a sun hat. That would be unseemly, common. So instead, they let the Mediterranean sun, one of the most intense in the inhabited world, roast them slowly. By midday, your skin is burning. By afternoon, you're red and painful. By evening, you're peeling. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again, because sunscreen won't be invented for another 2,000 years. And the concept of UV damage would sound like mysticism to these people. The sun doesn't just burn, it ages. You can tell someone's class by looking at their skin. The wealthy, who can afford to stay indoors during the hottest parts of the day, have relatively preserved complexions. The poor, who labor in fields and workshops, look decades older than they are, their skin leathered and creased by endless exposure. Your chiton, by noon, is stuck to you with sweat. The linen has dark patches under your arms, down your back, across your chest. There's no changing into a fresh outfit. This is it. This is what you wear until evening, when you might have the opportunity to wash it in the river or a basin, beating it against rocks to drive out the dirt and sweat, then hanging it to dry for tomorrow's repeat performance. Color is rare and expensive. Most people wear off-white or beige or brown, the natural colors of undyed fabric. Dyes come from shellfish, plants, minerals, and they're costly. A truly vibrant purple, the imperial color extracted from murex snails, could cost more than a house. So you wear your dull tunic, your brown himation, and you blend into the crowd of similarly drab citizens. Unless you're wealthy, then your chiton might be saffron yellow, or a deep blue, or that coveted purple. Your fibulae might be gold instead of bronze, decorated with intricate designs. Your himation might have an embroidered border, and everyone can tell at a glance exactly where you rank in society's hierarchy. But for most, fashion is function. You wear what keeps you covered, barely, and what doesn't completely fall apart after a month of use. You pin and you hope. You belt and you pray to Athena, goddess of weaving, that your clothes survive another day. And when a strong wind blows, which it often does in this coastal climate, you clutch at your himation desperately, trying to keep it from flying away like a sail, trying to maintain some dignity, while your chiton billows and threatens to reveal everything you've been trying to keep private. Welcome to ancient Greek fashion, beautiful in sculpture, horrifying in practice. Chapter 5. The Citizen Soldier's Burden. If you're a free man in ancient Greece, congratulations, you've just been drafted. Not for a specific war, though there's probably one happening somewhere. No, you've been drafted for life, because military service isn't a career choice. It's your duty, your identity, your reason for being a citizen at all. The Greeks don't have a professional standing army the way future empires will. They have you, farmers, merchants, craftsmen, philosophers, all expected to drop everything when the city-state calls, pick up your weapons, and march off to fight whoever has insulted Athenian honor this week. In Athens, your military obligation starts in your teens and continues until you're too old or too crippled to fight. In Sparta, God's help you if you're Spartan, your military obligation starts at age 7, when you're taken from your mother and thrown into the agoge, a training program that makes modern boot camp look like summer camp. The agoge is designed to break children and rebuild them as weapons. You're starved, deliberately, to teach you to steal food without being caught. You're beaten regularly to build pain tolerance. You sleep on reeds you've gathered yourself, in barracks with other boys, all of you competing for scraps of approval from instructors who show emotion about as often as stone statues do. You learn to fight in the phalanx, that famous Greek formation where soldiers stand shoulder to shoulder, shields overlapping, spears bristling forward like a metal hedge. It looks magnificent in paintings. In practice, it's claustrophobic, terrifying, and intensely vulnerable to panic. If one man breaks, the whole line can collapse. Your shield, the hoplon, is massive, 3 feet of bronze-faced wood, weighing 15 to 20 pounds. You carry it on your left arm, which means your right side is protected by the shield of the man next to you. This creates a powerful incentive not to retreat. If you run, you expose your comrade's unprotected side. Cowardice becomes not just personal dishonor, but communal betrayal. Your other equipment, assuming you can afford it, a bronze helmet that limits your vision and hearing, a breastplate that might be bronze, or might be layers of linen if you're poor, greaves protecting your shins, and a spear about 8 feet long. Plus, a short sword for close combat. Though if you've reached the point where you're using your sword, things have already gone horribly wrong. And here's the catch. You supply all of this yourself. There's no military quartermaster handing out standardized equipment. What you bring to war is what you can afford to buy or inherit. Wealthier citizens show up looking like heroes from mythology, clad head to toe in gleaming bronze. Poorer citizens show up in leather armor, or just thick cloth, carrying whatever spear they could afford, hoping their poverty doesn't translate directly into death. This creates a military hierarchy based on wealth. The richest fight as cavalry, mounted on horses they own and maintain. The upper middle class fight as hoplites, heavy infantry with full bronze panoply. The poor fight as light infantry or skirmishers, carrying slings or javelins, wearing minimal armor, generally dying first. And there's always a war. The Persian Wars, where Greece united against an Eastern invasion, are the exception that proves the rule. Most of the time, Greek city-states are fighting each other. Athens versus Sparta, Thebes versus everyone. Corinth getting involved in trade, disputes that escalate to bloodshed. Smaller city-states forming alliances that shift like coastal sands. The Peloponnesian War, Athens versus Sparta, and their respective alliances dragged on for 27 years. An entire generation grew up knowing nothing but war. Fathers died at Delphi. Sons died at Syracuse. Grandsons died at Aegospotami. The war hollowed out cities, destroyed economies, spread plague, and ended with Athens, the jewel of Greece, humiliated and broken. And when you're not actively fighting, you're preparing to fight. Training in the gymnasium, practicing with spear and shield, running drills, maintaining equipment, attending assembly meetings where war strategies are debated by every citizen who feels qualified to have an opinion, which is all of them. If you survive a battle, and that's a meaningful if, you don't receive a pension or healthcare or therapy for the horrors you've witnessed. You get to go home, pick up your tools, return to your farm or workshop, and pretend that the parts of you that broke in combat can be hidden from your family. You might have scars, physical ones, that mark you as a veteran. You definitely have scars of other kinds, the ones that wake you in the night with phantom sounds of men screaming, of bronze crunching through bone, of your friends dying in the dust while you stood helpless in formation, unable to break ranks even to help them. But the city needs you ready, because there's always another war coming, another insult to honor, another territorial dispute, another alliance to honor or betray. Your sword might be sheathed, but it's never far from your hand. And if you think being a woman exempts you from this military culture, think again. You don't fight, true, but you're expected to produce fighters. Your value is measured in sons, in how many potential soldiers you can birth and raise before your body gives out. Spartan women supposedly told their sons to return with your shield or on it, victorious or dead, with no option for cowardly survival. This is the reality of the citizen soldier. Not glory, not honor in the way poets describe it. Just duty, grinding and endless, that transforms free men into weapons the state can point at its enemies. Welcome to democracy. Now pick up your spear. Chapter 6. Woman as Shadow. Let's talk about what it means to be a woman in this enlightened civilization, this birthplace of Western thought and democratic ideals. Spoiler: you're barely considered a person. Your life is defined by absence. You can't vote, can't hold office, can't own property in your own name, can't appear in court as a witness or plaintiff, can't walk the streets without a male escort, without risking your reputation. You are legally property, first of your father, then of your husband, then of your sons, if you survive that long. The Greek word for the women's quarters, gynecium, comes from the same root as gynecology. It's where women are kept, separated from the public world, confined to domestic duties and childbearing. You spend your days in these rooms, spinning wool, weaving cloth, managing slaves if your household has them, raising children, preparing food, and generally existing as an invisible support system for the men who get to have actual lives. Your education, if you receive any, is minimal and focused. You might learn to read, but probably not to write. You might learn basic arithmetic for managing household accounts, but higher mathematics, philosophy, rhetoric, those are for boys. Your training is in domestic arts, how to run a household, how to manage servants, how to be pleasing to a husband, how to raise sons who will matter and daughters who won't. Marriage happens to you, not with you. Around age 13 or 14, often younger, your father arranges your marriage to a man he's selected, usually someone twice your age, sometimes older. You meet your husband perhaps once before the wedding, maybe not at all. Love is optional, possibly even discouraged. This is a transaction, a joining of families, a transfer of property, you from one owner, father, to another, husband. The wedding itself is a series of rituals where you're gradually separated from your childhood family and delivered to your new owner. You're bathed in water from a sacred spring. You're dressed in special clothing and veiled. You ride in a cart to your new home while friends and family sing songs, some joyful, some melancholic, acknowledging that you're dying to your old life and being reborn into your new role as wife. Your wedding night is likely traumatic. You're a child, essentially, handed over to an adult man who has every legal right to your body. There's no consent in any modern sense. There's only obedience. And if you're lucky, he's kind. If you're not, well, let's just say that Greek men have access to entertainment elsewhere. Prostitution is legal and common. Courtesans, called heterae, are educated women who provide companionship and conversation as well as sex, and they often have more freedom, respect than wives do. Your husband can visit them, can have relationships with them, and you have no recourse, no complaint, no way to express hurt or betrayal. Your job, your entire purpose, is to produce legitimate heirs, sons preferably. Sons are what matter. Sons carry on the family name, inherit property, perform the necessary religious rituals for ancestors. Daughters are tolerated, expensive, requiring dowries when they marry, contributing nothing to the family line. If you give birth to daughters repeatedly without producing a son, you might be divorced. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you've failed at your primary function. And in a divorce, you lose your children. They belong to your husband's household, not to you. Childbirth itself is a leading cause of death for women. 1 in 3 women dies either during pregnancy, in childbirth, or from infections shortly after. There are no hospitals, no understanding of germ theory, no sterilization of instruments. Midwives do their best with knowledge passed down through generations, but that knowledge is mixed with superstition and guesswork. If something goes wrong during labor, if the baby is breech, if you hemorrhage, if infection sets in, you're likely to die. And your baby might die with you. And if you do survive, but your baby doesn't, you'll be pregnant again soon because your husband needs heirs, and your grief is secondary to that need. Between pregnancies, between domestic duties, between the endless spinning and weaving and cooking and cleaning, you exist in a strange, liminal space. You're visible enough to be blamed when things go wrong, invisible enough to never receive credit when things go right. You can't attend the theater. You can't watch the Olympic Games. You can't participate in most religious festivals. You can't join the philosophical discussions in the agora. You can't enter the gymnasium where men exercise and socialize. Your world is measured in rooms, in small spaces, in private moments stolen between duties. Some Greek plays, ironically written by men and performed by male actors, feature strong female characters. Medea, who murders her children to punish her husband. Antigone, who defies the state to honor her brother. Clytemnestra, who kills her husband for sacrificing their daughter. These are powerful women, yes, but they're also warnings, cautionary tales about what happens when women step outside their proper roles. They're monsters, everyone, punished by fate or society for their transgressions. Now, Sparta. Sparta is different. Spartan women receive education. They exercise in public, developing strong bodies to bear strong warriors. They manage estates while their husbands are at war. They can own property. They're respected, even feared by other Greeks who find the whole arrangement unnatural and vaguely threatening. But even in Sparta, your value comes from the warriors you produce. You're freer than Athenian women, yes, but you're free in service to the state's military needs. Your health and education aren't for your benefit. They're to create better breeding stock for the war machine. And if you're an Athenian woman, you look at Spartan women with a mix of envy and horror. They have rights you'll never see, but they've also been turned into something you're not sure you want to be. Stripped of softness, of the private domain you rule, of the separation between male and female that defines your identity. So you remain in the gynoecium, spinning thread that becomes cloth, that becomes your daughter's chiton, teaching her the same domestic skills your mother taught you, preparing her for the same half-life of invisibility and service. The same cycle, generation after generation, women raising women to disappear. The Greeks worship goddesses, Athena the wise, Artemis the huntress, Hera the queen, Aphrodite the lovely. These female deities wield power, command respect, shape mortal fates, but real women. You're expected to stay quiet, stay home, and stay grateful for the privilege of existing at the margins of civilization. Welcome to enlightened Greece. Try not to think about everything you'll never be allowed to become. Chapter 7. Democracy for the Select Few. Athens, the birthplace of democracy, the shining example of citizens governing themselves. Except when you actually examine who counts as a citizen, the shine starts to tarnish pretty quickly. Let's be clear about who gets to participate in this revolutionary system of government. You must be male. You must be born to Athenian parents, both of them. You must be over 18. You must be free, not enslaved. And you must not be a foreigner, no matter how long you've lived in Athens, how much you've contributed, how fluently you speak Greek. That rules out women, half the population, slaves, perhaps a third of the population, foreign-born residents called metics, another significant chunk, and children, obviously. When you do the math, the vaunted Athenian democracy is run by maybe 10 to 15% of the people actually living in Athens. That's not democracy for the people. That's democracy for a very specific club of privileged men. But if you're lucky enough to be in that club, your participation isn't optional. It's expected. Athens practices direct democracy, not representative democracy. There's no Congress, No parliament, no elected officials who do the governing on your behalf. You are the government. The main governing body is the ecclesia, the assembly, which meets on the Pnyx, a hill west of the Acropolis. Any citizen can attend, and in important meetings, thousands do. You gather in the open air, sitting on stone benches or just on the hillside, listening to speakers propose laws, debate policies, discuss war strategies. Anyone can speak, in theory. In practice, those who speak effectively, who have been trained in rhetoric, who have the confidence of privilege, tend to dominate. But still, the principle is radical. A farmer can stand up and argue against a general's war strategy. A potter can propose a new law. A fishmonger can criticize the city's financial management. Decisions are made by vote, usually by show of hands. No secret ballots, no privacy in your political preferences. Everyone sees how you vote, which creates its own social pressures. Vote against a popular measure, and you might face social consequences. Vote for something that later proves disastrous, and your neighbors will remember. Beyond the assembly, there are other roles to fill. The boule, a council of 500 citizens chosen by lottery, prepares the agenda for the assembly. Various magistracies handle day-to-day administration, overseeing the marketplace, maintaining roads, managing public festivals, commanding military units. And here's where it gets wild. Most of these positions are filled by lottery, not by election, not by merit or experience, but by random selection. The Greeks believe that any citizen is capable of serving, and that random selection prevents corruption and the concentration of power, which means your fishmonger might indeed oversee military logistics. Your neighbor who believes in sea monsters might serve on a jury deciding a murder trial. That guy who can't manage his own household finances might be randomly selected to manage the city treasury. It's egalitarian in a terrifying sort of way. No specialized knowledge required, no expertise valued, just citizenship and luck. The jury system is particularly interesting. Juries are massive, sometimes hundreds of citizens, selected by lottery for each trial. There are no professional judges, no lawyers in the modern sense. The accused and the accuser each make their case directly to the jury, who then vote immediately without deliberation. Majority rules, and the punishments can be severe: fines, exile, execution. There's no appeals process, no second chances. The jury's decision is final, handed down by citizens who might know nothing about law, might be drunk from the morning's wine, might have personal grudges against one of the parties. Then there's ostracism, one of the most fascinating and disturbing aspects of Athenian democracy. Once a year, the assembly votes on whether to hold an ostracism. If they decide yes, every citizen writes a name on a broken piece of pottery, an ostrakon. The person who receives the most votes, provided at least 6,000 citizens participate, is exiled from Athens for 10 years. No trial, no charges, no defense. Just a popularity contest where the prize for being too influential is banishment. The stated purpose is to prevent tyranny, to keep any one person from accumulating too much power. The actual effect is to punish success, to cut down anyone who stands out too much, who threatens the comfortable mediocrity of the masses. Aristides the Just was ostracized, allegedly because people were tired of hearing how virtuous he was. Themistocles, who literally saved Athens from Persian conquest at the Battle of Salamis, was ostracized when he became too popular, too powerful. The man who secured Athens' survival was thanked with exile. This is democracy in action, brilliant, messy, often cruel, occasionally wise, frequently petty. It gives voice to citizens, but only certain citizens. It distributes power, but sometimes to people catastrophically unqualified to wield it. It protects against tyranny while enabling mob rule. And through it all, the vast majority of people living in Athens, women, slaves, foreigners, watch from the sidelines, their lives decided by debates they can't join, votes they can't cast, a system that governs them without including them. This is what democracy looked like in its birthplace. Revolutionary, yes. Inclusive, not even close. Chapter 8. The Chains That Built Glory. Let's talk about the foundation of this glorious civilization, the invisible hands that built the Parthenon and cooked the meals and raised the children and made everything run smoothly. Slaves. Slavery in ancient Greece isn't a shameful secret hidden in shadows. It's open, normal, accepted by literally everyone as the natural order of things. Even modest households, families just scraping by, likely own at least one slave. Wealthier families might own dozens. The truly rich, hundreds. The slave economy is so deeply embedded in Greek society that imagining life without it would be like imagining life without gravity. Aristotle, that giant of philosophy, literally argues that some people are slaves by nature, that certain humans are simply born to be owned by others. This isn't controversial in his time, it's just obvious. Where do slaves come from? Everywhere. Conquered territories supply a steady stream. When Athens or Sparta or any city-state wins a war, the survivors become property. Pirates raid coastal towns and sell the captives at markets. Slave traders travel trade routes, buying people from kingdoms to the east and north and south. Anyone exotic enough to fetch a good price. Thracians, Scythians, Syrians, Egyptians, even Greeks from rival city-states, all a fair game. Slavery isn't based on race the way it will be in future centuries. It's based on bad luck, on being on the wrong side of a war, on being in the wrong place when the raiders came. Some slaves are born into slavery. If your mother is a slave, you're a slave, period. There's no path to citizenship, no way to be born free from enslaved parentage. Your children will be slaves, and their children, and on, unless someone chooses to free you, which is rare. Your life as a slave varies wildly depending on your owner and your role. If you're educated, if you can read, write, do mathematics, you might work as a tutor, teaching your owner's children, or as a secretary, managing correspondence and accounts. This is probably the best possible position. Indoor work, mental rather than physical, some degree of respect. If you're attractive and young, you might become a household servant, serving meals, cleaning, attending to your owner's personal needs. This position comes with its own dangers, particularly for young women and boys, because you have no right to refuse anything your owner demands. Your body is their property, and they can use it however they wish. If you're strong but uneducated, you might work in the fields, farming your owner's land, or in workshops, making pottery or metalwork or whatever craft your owner practices. This is hard labor, dawn to dusk, your body wearing down year by year. And if you're particularly unlucky, you work in the silver mines at Lorien. The mines are hell in the most literal sense Greeks can imagine. Narrow tunnels carved into the earth, some barely wide enough to crawl through. All of them dark, except for the flickering light of oil lamps. You work in these tunnels, chipping at silver-bearing ore with hand tools, filling baskets, crawling back to the surface to empty them, then descending again. The air is thick with stone dust that coats your lungs, making every breath a struggle. The heat is oppressive, the darkness is absolute, and the danger is constant. Tunnels collapse, burying workers alive. Lamps go out, leaving you blind and lost. Injuries happen daily. Broken bones, crushed fingers, backs ruined by hauling ore. Children work here too. They're small enough to fit into the narrowest shafts, so they're sent into spaces adults can't reach. Many die before adolescence, lungs destroyed, bodies broken, crushed in collapses, or simply worked to death. And why? For silver. For the coins that fund Athens' wars, build its ships, pay its citizens to serve in government. For the wealth that makes Athens powerful, that allows it to dominate the Aegean, that creates the leisure time for citizens to practice democracy. The glory of Athens is literally built on the broken bodies of slaves dying in the dark. But even house slaves, even those with relatively comfortable positions, live with fundamental insecurity. You can be sold at any time, for any reason. Your owner might fall into debt and need to liquidate assets. They might die, and their heirs might not want to keep you. You might displease them somehow, or just become redundant. When you're sold, you're separated from any family you've formed. And yes, slaves form families, have relationships, love each other, even though those bonds have no legal recognition. Your children can be sold away from you. Your partner can be given to someone else. You have no rights to keep your family together. You also have no legal recourse if you're abused. If your owner beats you, starves you, tortures you, that's their right. Your property. Property can't bring charges against its owner. Other citizens might judge an owner who's excessively cruel, might think less of them socially, but legally, there's nothing you can do. Some slaves earn their freedom, a process called manumission. This might happen if you've served faithfully for many years, or if your owner dies and frees you in their will, or if you somehow manage to save money. Some owners allow slaves to keep tips or small payments for extra work, and buy your freedom. But even manumission doesn't make you fully free. You become a freedman, which is its own category, neither slave nor citizen. You still owe obligations to your former owner, a sort of perpetual gratitude that might include continued service or payment. You can't become a citizen, can't vote, can't own land. Your children might have better prospects, but you're forever marked as someone who was once property, and the vast majority never earn freedom. They work until they can't work anymore, until their bodies break down, until they die from disease or injury, or simply old age accelerated by a lifetime of labor. All of this, every bit of it, is considered completely normal. Philosophers debate the finer points of slavery. Are some people naturally suited for it? Should slaves be treated kindly for practical reasons? How should one manage a large slave household? But none of them question whether slavery itself should exist. The plays performed in Athens' great theatres, those brilliant works of drama that explore justice and fate and human nature, are written by slaveholders, performed by free actors, watched by citizen audiences, all while slaves stand in the background, silent and invisible, making everything possible. This is the foundation. Not marble and limestone, but human beings treated as tools, as possessions, as less than human. The democracy, the philosophy, the art, the architecture, all of it rests on this ugly truth. Welcome to classical civilization. The glory is built on bones. Chapter 9. Medicine, prayer, and desperation. You wake with a fever. Your body aches, your head pounds, your throat burns. In the modern world, you take some ibuprofen, maybe see a doctor if it persists, possibly get antibiotics if it's bacterial. In ancient Greece, you're probably going to die. Let's start with the basics. There are no hospitals. If you're sick, you stay home, sweat through your fever on that thin mat you call a bed, and hope either your body fights off whatever's killing you or the gods decide you're worth saving. Medical knowledge is a bizarre mix of genuine observation, philosophical theory, and absolute nonsense. The dominant theory, which will persist for centuries, is humoral medicine, the belief that the body contains 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and that illness results from these humors being out of balance. Too much blood? You're feverish and restless, so let's drain some out through bloodletting. Too much phlegm? That's why you're coughing, so we'll give you something to help you expel it. Too much yellow bile? That's making you angry and aggressive. Here's a purge to empty your digestive system. Black bile excess? That's causing your depression, so maybe try changing your diet or taking a walk. Some of this sort of works in a roundabout way. Rest, dietary changes, and purging might genuinely help certain conditions, but the underlying theory is wrong, and the treatments are often as dangerous as the diseases. If you can afford a physician, and most can't, they'll examine you through observation. They'll look at your skin color, the whites of your eyes, your tongue. They'll feel your pulse, though they don't understand what it means the way modern medicine does. They'll ask about your dreams, your bowel movements, your emotional state. They'll consider the season, the weather, recent events in your life. Then, they'll prescribe treatment. This might include herbal remedies, some of which actually work. Willow bark for pain, which contains compounds related to aspirin. Poppy extracts for more severe pain, which is essentially opium. Various plants for digestive issues, infections, inflammation. Ancient physicians have observed that certain remedies help certain conditions, even if they don't understand why. But treatment also includes bloodletting, cupping, creating suction on the skin to draw out bad humors, purges to induce vomiting or diarrhea, and dietary restrictions that might leave you malnourished at a time when you most need strength. Surgery is rare and terrifying. Without anesthesia beyond perhaps some wine or opium, without antiseptics, without understanding of infection, even minor procedures are dangerous. Need a tooth pulled? Hope you're good at enduring pain, because the best they can offer is something to bite down on while they yank it out with iron forceps. Have a wound that needs cauterizing? They'll heat an iron until it's red hot, then press it against your flesh, burning it closed while you scream. The smell of your own cooking meat will haunt you. Need an amputation? If gangrene has set in, removing the limb might save your life, but the process is brutal. A sore through bone, blood everywhere, intense pain beyond description, and a significant chance you'll die anyway from shock or infection. The most skilled surgeons can set broken bones, stitch wounds, drain abscesses, remove growths. They have a variety of tools: scalpels, probes, forceps, hooks, but every procedure carries enormous risk. And then there's childbirth. Pregnancy is dangerous. Birth is a gamble with death. Midwives attend women in labor, women who've learned their craft through apprenticeship and experience. They know techniques to help, certain positions to ease labor, ways to turn a breech baby, when to use herbal preparations to speed contractions or slow bleeding. But they don't understand infection. They don't wash their hands between patients. They don't sterilize their tools. And when complications arise, a baby stuck in the birth canal, a placenta that won't detach, hemorrhaging that won't stop, their options are limited and desperate. 1 in 3 women dies from childbirth-related causes. 1 in 3. Think about every woman you know, every female family member. 1/3 of them would die bringing life into the world. Infants fare little better. Without understanding of hygiene, without proper nutrition, without any way to treat infections, childhood is a gauntlet. Babies die from diarrhea, from fever, from complications, from minor injuries. Children who survive infancy still face disease. Measles, mumps, various fevers that have no name but kill reliably. And then there are the plagues. The plague of Athens during the Peloponnesian War killed perhaps 1/4 of the city's population. The historian Thucydides describes it in horrific detail. Fever, rash, vomiting, diarrhea, unquenchable thirst, bodies piling up faster than they could be buried. The dead were stacked like cordwood. Funeral rituals were abandoned. Families were wiped out. No one knew what caused it. Was it divine punishment for breaking a peace treaty? A poison introduced by Sparta? Bad air from corpses and overcrowding? The theories were all wrong, and so every attempted cure was useless. People tried prayer, sacrifice to the gods, herbal remedies, fleeing to the countryside. None of it mattered. The plague took who it took, seemingly at random. And then, eventually, inexplicably, it faded. For chronic conditions, for the diseases that don't kill quickly, but grind you down over years, there's no help at all. Arthritis will twist your joints until you can barely move. Tooth decay will progress until infection spreads to your jaw, your skull, your brain. Cataracts will slowly steal your sight. Dementia will erase your mind while your body continues functioning. The Greeks worship Asclepius, god of medicine, and build temples to him, where the sick come to sleep and pray, hoping for divine intervention. These Asclepia are part hospital, part religious sanctuary. You undergo purification rituals, make sacrifices, then sleep in special dormitories, waiting for Asclepius to appear in your dreams and heal you. Sometimes people report miraculous cures. More often, they simply die, and their families return home to mourn. The physicians who do exist are respected but viewed with suspicion. Anyone can claim to be a doctor. There's no licensing, no formal training required, no board certification. Some have trained with established practitioners, learning through observation and apprenticeship. Others have just decided to hang out a shingle and hope their guesses are more right than wrong. The famous Hippocratic Oath, still referenced in modern medicine, originates here. Physicians swear to do no harm, to respect their teachers, to keep confidences. It's an attempt to create ethical standards in a field that desperately needs them. But oaths don't cure disease. They don't stop infection. They don't replace the knowledge that won't exist for another 2,000 years. So when you wake with that fever, when your body starts failing in ways you don't understand, your options are limited. Pray to the gods, consult a physician if you can afford one, and hope they're more skilled than charlatan. Rely on folk remedies passed down through generations, or simply endure and hope your body is strong enough to survive. Most of the time, it isn't. Welcome to ancient Greek healthcare. The prescription is prayer, and the prognosis is grim. Chapter 10. The Theatre of Souls. Dawn breaks over Athens, and already the city is stirring with anticipation. Today is festival day, dedicated to Dionysus, god of wine and ecstasy and transformation. And that means theatre. This isn't entertainment in the modern sense, something to do on a lazy evening. This is a civic and religious duty, a communal experience that will consume the entire day, that will leave you emotionally devastated, spiritually transformed, possibly enlightened, definitely exhausted. The theatre itself is a massive amphitheatre carved into the south slope of the Acropolis. Stone benches rise in great arcing tiers, capable of holding 15,000 people or more. You arrive early, climbing to your assigned section, Seating is organized by tribal affiliation, with special sections reserved for priests, magistrates, and honored citizens. Admission is free for citizens, funded by wealthy benefactors as a form of public service. Even poor citizens can attend, though if you're a woman, you might not be allowed, depending on which historian you believe. Some say women attended, sitting in separate sections. Others claim they were barred entirely, that theatre was a male space, with female characters performed by male actors. You settle onto the hard stone, no cushion, no back support, and prepare for the marathon ahead. Performances run from sunrise to sunset, multiple plays presented back-to-back in competition. 3 tragic playwrights have each submitted 3 tragedies and a satyr play. Then come the comedies. You will sit through all of it. The plays themselves are unlike anything modern audiences experience. The actors wear elaborate masks, not delicate decorative things, but massive constructions that amplify sound and project character across the vast space. The masks are painted with exaggerated expressions, tragedy's gaping mouth frozen in eternal sorrow, comedy's leering grin. Costumes are similarly exaggerated. Tragic actors wear platform shoes to increase their height, making them seem larger than life, almost divine. Their robes flow in unnatural ways. Everything about them screams, this is not reality. This is something more than reality. The chorus, a group of 12 or 15 performers, moves in synchronized formation, their voices blending into a single entity that comments on the action, questions the characters, speaks for society itself. They dance, their movements ritualized and symbolic. They are both audience surrogate and divine interpreter, both insider and outsider to the drama. And the content, gods above, the content. Tragedies don't pull punches, they explore the darkest corners of human experience. Murder, incest, madness, divine punishment for crimes committed generations ago. You watch Oedipus discover he's killed his father and married his mother, then gouge out his own eyes in horror. You watch Medea methodically murder her children to punish her unfaithful husband. You watch Agamemnon return victorious from Troy, murdered by his wife in his own bath. These aren't escapist fantasies. They're confrontations with fate, with the terrible weight of divine will, with the consequences of human pride and passion. They ask impossible questions. Is justice possible in a world ruled by capricious gods? Can humans ever truly control their destiny? What do we owe our family versus our city versus our own conscience? And you feel it, sitting there in the sun, surrounded by thousands of your fellow citizens. You feel the catharsis Aristotle will later describe, the purging of emotions through witnessing suffering more extreme than your own. You weep openly. Everyone does. Grown men sob at tragic reversals. The entire audience shudders collectively when the messenger describes horrors too terrible to stage. Then, after hours of emotional devastation, come the comedies. Greek comedy is not gentle humor. It's crude, bawdy, obscene, and brutally satirical. The plays mock politicians by name, parody philosophers, lampoon generals, stuff into question every sacred cow Athens has. Aristophanes writes a play where women withhold sex until the men agree to end a war. Another where a farmer rides a giant dung beetle to Olympus to complain to the gods. Another where Socrates is portrayed as a charlatan teaching in a thinkery, corrupting youth with nonsensical philosophy. The costumes include enormous artificial fallacies. The jokes involve bodily functions in graphic detail. The political satire is vicious and specific. This is free speech in its most raw form. Democracy allowing citizens to mock and criticize power without much fear of retribution. And the audience is not passive. You cheer, you boo, you heckle performers. You shout agreement or disagreement with the chorus's opinions. You throw fruit if you're particularly moved to either approval or disgust. Theatre is participatory, democratic, noisy. At the end of the festival, a jury of citizens votes on which playwright wins the competition. The prizes are wreaths, honor, fame. No money, but reputation that will last. Coming in first at the Dionysia means your name will be remembered. Coming in last means facing your fellow citizens' judgment in every interaction that follows. But win or lose, the plays have done their work. You've spent a day immersed in stories that reflect your society back at itself, that ask hard questions, that provide no easy answers. You've laughed until your sides ached. You've cried until your eyes burned. You've been transformed, however temporarily, by the communal experience of theatre. As the sun sets and you file out of the amphitheatre, legs stiff from sitting all day on stone, voice hoarse from shouting and weeping, you carry something with you. A feeling, a question, a memory of stories that will live in your mind long after the actors have removed their masks. This is what theatre means in ancient Greece. Not distraction, but enlightenment. Not entertainment, but education. Not escape, but confrontation with the deepest truths of human existence. And tomorrow, after you've slept and recovered, you'll return to your ordinary life, to the grinding routine of survival. But you'll remember, and maybe, just maybe, you'll understand your own struggles a little differently, having witnessed heroes and gods and monsters face theirs. Chapter 11. Philosophy in the Streets. You're walking through the Agora, Athens' central marketplace, trying to mind your own business, maybe buy some fish for dinner, maybe pick up clay for the workshop. And then you see him, Socrates, barefoot as always, wearing the same threadbare chiton he's worn for what seems like years, standing in a cluster of young men who hang on his every word. And before you can change direction, before you can avoid eye contact, he's noticed you. "Friend," he calls out, "come, help us settle a question. What is justice?" You stop. This is a trap. Everything with Socrates is a trap. But you also can't just walk away. That would be rude, cowardly even. So you approach, already regretting this decision. Justice is giving each person their due, you offer, repeating something you once heard someone else say. His eyes light up. Socrates loves when people offer definitions. It gives him something to destroy. Interesting, he says, in that tone that means trouble. So if I borrow your sword and then go mad, and you ask for it back, should I give it to you? After all, it's yours. It's your due. But wouldn't that be unjust, arming a madman? You stumble through an answer. He dismantles it with another question. You try to refine your definition. He finds another problem. This continues for what feels like hours, but is probably 20 minutes. And by the end, you're no longer sure you know what justice is, what words mean, whether you exist. Welcome to philosophy in ancient Greece. It's not an ivory tower activity. It's not confined to written treatises. It's alive, aggressive, inescapable. Philosophy, literally love of wisdom, is everywhere. In Athens, in the agora, in the gymnasium where men exercise, in private homes during dinner parties called symposiums. Philosophers don't wait for you to come to them. They come to you. Socrates is the most famous or infamous, depending on who you ask. He claims to know nothing, which is clearly false. He knows exactly how to make everyone else feel stupid. His method, which will later be called the Socratic method, involves asking questions, lots of questions, each designed to expose contradictions in your thinking. He has no written works, no school, no students in the formal sense. But young men follow him around, fascinated by his ability to dismantle seemingly solid arguments, to show that what everyone knows might be entirely wrong. He's particularly interested in ethics and politics. What is virtue? What is courage? What makes a life worth living? These aren't academic questions to him. They're practical matters, because how you answer them determines how you should live. His student Plato will eventually write down these conversations, creating dialogues that preserve Socrates' voice, or at least Plato's interpretation of it. In these dialogues, Socrates emerges as both brilliant and irritating, someone who genuinely seeks truth, but also seems to enjoy making people uncomfortable. Plato himself takes philosophy in different directions. He founds the academy, one of the first institutions of higher learning, where students study mathematics, astronomy, philosophy. His theory of forms proposes that the physical world is just shadow, that true reality exists in a realm of perfect, eternal forms that our souls can remember from before birth. It's wild, mystical, based more on intuition than evidence, but it's also profoundly influential, shaping Western thought for millennia. Then there's Aristotle, Plato's student, who eventually breaks with his teacher's mysticism and focuses on the observable world. He studies everything: biology, physics, politics, ethics, logic, poetry. He dissects animals to understand anatomy. He collects constitutions from different city-states to compare governmental systems. He creates formal logic, giving humanity tools to analyze arguments systematically. But these are the famous names. The agora is full of lesser-known philosophers, each with their own theories, their own followers, their own axes to grind. The cynics, who reject material possessions and social conventions living like dogs. The word cynic comes from the Greek word for dog. Diogenes, the most famous cynic, supposedly lives in a large ceramic jar, owns nothing but a cloak and a bowl, and spends his time insulting powerful people and masturbating in public to prove that natural acts shouldn't be shameful. The sophists, traveling teachers who claim they can teach virtue and rhetoric for a fee. Traditional philosophers like Socrates hate them, accuse them of corrupting truth by teaching people to argue any position, regardless of whether it's actually correct. The hedonists, who argue that pleasure is the highest good, though they define pleasure more subtly than simple physical gratification. They mean the absence of pain, a state of tranquility. Philosophy in ancient Greece isn't polite. It's combative, public, sometimes physically aggressive. Philosophers don't just disagree. They insult each other, mock each other's theories, steal each other's students. And it's not always safe. Socrates will eventually be put on trial for corrupting the youth and not believing in the city's gods. He'll be found guilty and sentenced to death by hemlock poisoning. His crime: asking too many questions, making too many important people look foolish, teaching young aristocrats to question authority. Before he drinks the poison, he'll spend his final hours discussing the immortality of the soul with his students, calmly arguing philosophical points while death approaches. It's the most Socrates thing possible, turning even his execution into a teaching moment. But that's the future. Right now, standing in the agora, you're just trying to escape this conversation without having your entire worldview dismantled. So you're saying you don't actually know what justice is? Socrates asks, smiling. I suppose not, you admit. Wonderful. He seems genuinely delighted. Now we're getting somewhere, because recognizing your own ignorance is the first step toward wisdom. You're not sure whether you've been enlightened or insulted, possibly both. You make your excuses and flee to buy your fish, but the questions follow you home. What is justice? How should one live? What makes actions right or wrong? These questions will never fully leave you. Philosophy, once encountered, lodges in the mind like a splinter. Uncomfortable, irritating, impossible to ignore. Welcome to enlightened Athens, where you can't even buy groceries without having an existential crisis. Chapter 12. The Tyranny of the Gods. Let's talk about the most important and most terrifying aspect of ancient Greek life. The gods. They're everywhere. In the thunder overhead, in the spring that provides water, in the tree that shades your house, in the success or failure of your crops, in whether you survive childbirth or battle or plague. And they're watching you, always watching, judging, waiting for you to slip up so they can punish you in creative and horrifying ways. Greek religion isn't about faith in the way later monotheistic religions will frame it. It's about transaction, appeasement, ritual correctness. You don't believe in the gods. They're obviously real, their effects visible everywhere. Instead, you try desperately to stay on their good side through endless cycles of sacrifice and prayer and festivals. The Olympians, Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Aphrodite, Hephaestus, Hermes, Hestia, or Dionysus, depending on who's counting, are the major players. But there are countless others, minor deities, local spirits, personified concepts like Nike, victory, the fates who spin out life's thread, the furies who punish oath-breakers and murderers. None of them are good, not in any moral sense. They're powerful, they have their domains, but good? They're petty, jealous, vengeful, lustful, deceptive, and incredibly dangerous. Zeus, king of gods, is most famous for his inability to keep it in his pants. He transforms into animals to seduce or assault mortal women, a swan, a bull, a shower of gold. His wife Hera, understandably furious, punishes not Zeus but his victims, cursing the women he's raped or their children. Poseidon sends earthquakes and floods when displeased. Athena turns people into spiders for daring to be skilled at weaving. Apollo curses prophets to tell truths no one will believe. Artemis has her hunters turn men into deer and tear them apart with dogs for seeing her bathing. And that's just the major gods. The minor spirits are even more dangerous because they're everywhere and easier to offend accidentally. Nymphs inhabit springs, trees, mountains. Offend one by cutting down the wrong tree, by polluting a stream, and you'll face consequences. So your daily life is filled with religious observance. Before any significant action, planting crops, starting a journey, opening a business, going to war, you sacrifice to the appropriate gods. The sacrifice must be done correctly, with the right animal, at the right altar, with the right prayers. Make a mistake, and the gods might not just ignore you. They might actively work against you. Sacrifices are expensive. A bull for major occasions, a sheep or goat for moderate ones, a bird for smaller requests. If you're poor, you might sacrifice grain or wine, but animal sacrifice is preferred. The gods want blood. The ritual is specific. You lead the animal to the altar, sprinkle it with water and grain, say the appropriate prayers, then cut its throat. The blood must flow onto the altar. Then you butcher the animal, burn certain parts, the bones wrapped in fat, as an offering to the gods. The smell rises as smoke, carrying your prayers heavenward. The rest of the meat, that's divided among the worshippers. Religious festivals often include public feasts where sacrificed animals are cooked and shared. For many poor Greeks, religious festivals are the only times they eat meat. But even correct sacrifice doesn't guarantee divine favor. The gods are moody, capricious. They might help you for a while, then turn on you for reasons you'll never understand. They might punish you for crimes your ancestors committed. They might just not like your face. And there's no escaping them. You can't be atheist. That's not even a concept anyone would take seriously. The god's existence is self-evident. You can't convert to another religion because religion isn't about belief systems. It's about which gods you need to appease based on where you live and what you do. The oracle at Delphi, priestess of Apollo, delivers prophecies that city-states pay enormous sums to receive. Her pronouncements, always ambiguous, always open to multiple interpretations, guide major decisions. Go to war? The oracle says, if you march, a great empire will fall. She doesn't specify which empire. It might be yours. Temples dominate city landscapes, massive structures housing cult statues of gods. The Parthenon, dedicated to Athena, isn't just beautiful architecture. It's Athena's house. Inside stands a massive ivory and gold statue of the goddess, and you can only enter if you're ritually pure, having bathed and made appropriate offerings. Mystery cults offer secret knowledge and hope for a better afterlife. The Eleusinian mysteries, dedicated to Demeter and Persephone, promise initiates special treatment in the underworld. But the rituals are secret, revealed only to initiates who've taken oaths never to speak of what they've seen. Break the oath. The gods will destroy you. Curse tablets are common, thin sheets of lead inscribed with prayers, asking gods to punish someone who's wronged you. You roll them up, pierce them with a nail, and throw them into a sacred spring or bury them in a cemetery. The gods of the underworld, you hope, will hear your curse and act, and looming over everything is fate. The Greeks believe in Moira, destiny that even gods must obey. The Fates, three sisters who spin, measure, and cut the thread of every life, operate beyond divine interference. When your thread is cut, you die, regardless of prayers or sacrifices. This creates a world view of existential anxiety. You must constantly appease gods who might help or harm you on a whim. But ultimately, your fate is already determined, and all your efforts might be meaningless. Yet you try anyway. You sacrifice, you pray, you participate in festivals, you consult oracles, you make vows and offerings. Because what else can you do? The alternative, ignoring the gods, is unthinkable. So you live under this divine tyranny, never certain whether the gods are pleased or plotting against you, never sure if your next action will offend some deity whose domain you don't even know you've entered. The gods gave civilization, true. They taught humans agriculture, gave them fire. Thanks, Prometheus. Sorry about the eternal torture. Inspired poetry and art. But they also demand constant tribute, constant fear, constant awareness that you're not in control of your own life. Welcome to Greek spirituality. The gods are real, the gods are powerful, and the gods don't particularly care about your happiness. Sleep tight, and maybe say a prayer before you do, just in case. Chapter 13. The Mathematics of Mortality. Let's talk about something cheerful. How quickly you're going to die. Life expectancy in ancient Greece hovers around 30 to 35 years. That's not a retirement age. That's your entire lifespan, if you're lucky. But that number is misleading because it includes infant and child mortality, which is catastrophically high. Roughly 1/3 of children die before age 5. Disease, malnutrition, accidents, infections from minor injuries. Childhood is a gauntlet, and many don't survive it. If you make it to adulthood, your chances improve somewhat. You might live into your 40s, maybe 50s, if you're fortunate. But reaching 60, that's rare enough to be remarkable. Reaching 70, you're basically a medical miracle. Death isn't just common, it's casual, it's expected. Every family has lost children. Every mother knows the pain of holding a baby who won't wake up. Every father has buried sons. Everyone has watched friends and siblings simply stop existing. Disease is the primary killer. Without understanding of germ theory, without antibiotics, without vaccines, infections run rampant. A scratch becomes septic. A cough becomes pneumonia. A stomach upset becomes dysentery that leads to fatal dehydration. Waterborne diseases are constant threats. Typhoid, cholera, various intestinal parasites all flourish in a world where clean water and sewage systems barely exist. You drink from public fountains used by hundreds of people. You wash in streams where animals also drink. Cross-contamination is inevitable. For women, childbirth remains one of the leading causes of death throughout life. That 1 in 3 statistic isn't exaggerated. Pregnancy is dangerous. Birth is dangerous. The postpartum period is dangerous. Hemorrhaging, infection, eclampsia, obstructed labor. So many things can go wrong. And midwives, for all their experience, can't fix most of them. And if you survive pregnancy, you'll likely face it again and again. Women give birth to many children because so many die. Having 8 or 9 children and seeing 3 or 4 survive to adulthood is normal. For men, war is a constant threat. If you're of military age, roughly 18 to 45, you're liable for military service. Wars happen frequently. Your chances of dying in battle or from wounds that become infected afterward or from diseases that spread through army camps are substantial. Even if you avoid direct combat, military life is dangerous. Rowing triremes for hours in cramped conditions, marching long distances with heavy equipment, living on poor rations that leave you malnourished and vulnerable. Many soldiers never face an enemy. They just waste away from dysentery or fever. Accidents are everywhere. Construction work without safety equipment. Agricultural work with primitive tools. Ships that sink in storms. Fires that spread through cramped wooden houses. Loose stones that cause fatal falls. Animals, wild or domestic, that kick or bite or trample. Malnutrition weakens everyone, the poor especially, but even middle-class citizens don't get adequate nutrition. Grain-based diets lack essential vitamins and minerals. Meat is rare, variety is limited. Scurvy, rickets, anemia, all are common, all weaken the body, all make people vulnerable to diseases they might otherwise survive. Dental problems kill people. Yes, really. A tooth abscess can spread infection to your jaw, your skull, your brain. Without antibiotics, without proper dental care, many people die from complications that started as simple cavities. Cancer exists, though Greeks don't understand it. Tumors grow, spread, kill. Physicians can sometimes remove accessible growths, but internal cancers are death sentences, often prolonged and agonizing. Parasites infest nearly everyone. Intestinal worms, tapeworms, flukes. They compete with you for nutrition, cause pain and digestive problems, sometimes do more serious damage. In severe cases, they kill directly. In most cases, they just make you weaker, more vulnerable to other threats. Stroke, heart attack, aneurysm, all happen without warning. One moment, someone is alive, the next, they're not. The Greeks have no framework for understanding cardiovascular disease, so sudden death seems random, another expression of divine caprice. And then there's violence beyond war. Athens, for all its culture, has a murder rate that would shock modern sensibilities. Fights turn deadly. Robberies escalate. Blood feuds between families continue for generations. The state's ability to enforce law and order is limited, and in rural areas, essentially non-existent. Burial practices matter enormously because Greeks believe unburied souls wander eternally, unable to enter the underworld. If you die far from home, in war, at sea, on a journey, and no one recovers your body, your soul is condemned to wander forever. Even proper burial requires resources. Your family must wash your body, dress it, place a coin in your mouth to pay Charon, the ferryman who rows souls across the river Styx. They must hold a funeral, feed attendees, make offerings to the gods. If they're too poor, if you're too alone, you might be dumped in a common pit outside the city walls, unmarked and forgotten. Children who die are mourned, but also expected. There's even a cruel pragmatism to it. Don't get too attached until a child survives their first few years, because odds are they won't. Name children after dead siblings. Reuse names. Life continues even as individuals fall. And through all of this, Greeks maintain a complex relationship with death. They fear it. Their underworld isn't a place of punishment for most, but it's still grim, a shadowy existence without joy. Yet they also accept it as inevitable, as the natural boundary that gives life meaning. Heroes seek kleos, glory that outlasts death, fame that grants a kind of immortality through memory. Achilles chooses a short, glorious life over a long, forgettable one. That choice makes sense in a world where everyone dies young anyway. Better to be remembered than to fade into obscurity. But most people aren't heroes. They're just trying to survive one more day, one more season, one more year. They watch loved ones die. They feel their own bodies breaking down. They develop the coughs that won't go away, the pains that intensify, the wounds that won't heal. And they know with absolute certainty that their time is limited. Not in an abstract someday we all die way, but concretely. Death is their neighbor, their constant companion, the guest who always arrives too soon. So when ancient Greeks talk about fate, about living in the moment, about the gods' whims determining everything, they're not being philosophical in an abstract sense. They're describing lived reality, where death waits around every corner. where survival past 30 is remarkable, where every day might genuinely be your last. Welcome to the ancient world. The view is magnificent, but the life expectancy is deadly. Epilogue. Could you really survive? So here we are, at the end of our journey through the sun-scorched, God-haunted, beautiful nightmare that was ancient Greece. We've walked through a day in your life, waking in stifling heat, choking down barley bread, scraping yourself clean with oil and a blade, draping yourself in fabric that barely counts as clothing, stepping barefoot onto burning streets. We've seen the expectations, men drafted for endless wars, women reduced to shadows in their own homes, both sexes crushed under the weight of gods who demand constant appeasement. We've witnessed the democracy that excluded most humans, the philosophy that questioned everything, the theater that gutted audiences emotionally, the medicine that barely deserved the name. We've walked past slaves, hundreds of thousands of them, building the glory we admire, invisible except when their labor was needed, suffering in darkness so citizens could debate the nature of justice in sunlight. We've felt the constant presence of death, claiming 1 in 3 children, waiting in every scratch that might turn septic, every pregnancy that might become fatal, every sip of questionable water. So let's ask plainly, could you survive a single day in ancient Greece? No. You'd collapse before noon from heat and dehydration. You'd gag on the breakfast and go hungry rather than eat more. You'd recoil from the hygiene practices. You'd be scandalized by the casual nudity, the open-air defecation, the communal bathing. If you're a woman, you'd rage against the confined life, the arranged marriage, the lack of rights. If you're a man, you'd refuse to pick up a spear and march off to die for a city-state's honor. You'd question the gods, probably out loud, and find yourself on trial for impiety. You'd object to slavery and be viewed as insane. Everyone knows some people are natural slaves, don't they? You'd demand medicine that works, democracy that includes everyone, rights that don't depend on your birth, gender, or class. And you'd be seen as dangerously radical, as someone who threatens the natural order. But here's the thing. Ancient Greeks didn't just survive. They created, they built, they thought deeply about existence, about ethics, about what makes humans human. They gave us democracy, flawed and limited though it was. They gave us philosophy that still shapes how we think. They gave us drama that still moves audiences. They gave us Olympic Games, mathematical principles, scientific inquiry, architectural innovations. They did all of this while living lives we'd consider unbearable, under pressures we can barely imagine, with lifespans we'd view as tragic. They weren't superhuman, they were just human, adapted to their world, shaped by their circumstances, making the best of conditions that would break us. They watched their children die and had more children. They felt the weight of divine tyranny and created art that questioned it. They lived in a slave society and debated the nature of justice. They excluded most humans from citizenship and invented democracy. The contradictions are almost unbearable. But they're real. Ancient Greece was brilliant and brutal, enlightened and enslaving, creative and cruel. Could you survive? No. But they did. Not because life was easy, but because they found ways to make meaning in hardship, to create beauty amid suffering, to build civilization even as they struggled just to stay alive. So the next time you see a marble statue, or read Plato, or admire the Parthenon, remember, this wasn't created by gods or heroes or idealized ancients. It was created by people who woke sweating in clay huts, who ate stale bread and watered wine, who walked barefoot on burning streets, who feared the gods and each other and death. They survived not because they were stronger than you, but because they had no choice. And in that survival, they created something that outlasted them, ideas and art that we're still grappling with, still learning from, still being shaped by, 25 centuries later. You wouldn't last a day in ancient Greece, but you don't have to. They did it for you, for us, for everyone who came after. They endured, they created, they died, and they left behind a legacy that refuses to fade. The marble may crack, the temples may crumble, but the questions they asked about justice, about virtue, about how to live a good life, those questions are immortal. Sleep now, modern human, in your climate-controlled room, on your comfortable bed, with medicine in your cabinet and running water a few steps away. Sleep knowing that every comfort you enjoy was purchased by the suffering of countless people who came before. And maybe, just maybe, be grateful that history moves in one direction and you were born on this side of it. Ancient Greece was magnificent and terrible, beautiful and brutal, enlightened and barbaric. You wouldn't survive it, but you can honor it by remembering not the myth, but the reality, the sweat and dust, the pain and fear, the brief lives lived with surprising brilliance. They were human, entirely and completely human. And that's why their legacy still matters, still haunts us, still teaches us about what it means to be fragile creatures trying to make meaning in a harsh world. Good night, and thank the gods, or thank chance, or thank progress, that you're here, now, reading this, instead of living it.